My stepdad told me, "You'll never replace me." At my wedding, I asked my mom who should walk her down the aisle, and she chose me. I'm Lily, 27 years old, female, and I swear I can still hear the sentence like it's nailed to the inside of my skull. You'll never replace me. The way he said it, low, wet, like he was swallowing a growl, made the hall mirror quiver in its wire. That was 2 apartments ago, the night the picture of me and my mom on the Santa Monica Pier fell off the bookshelf and spidered into 100 little islands of our faces. I swept it up the next morning with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. He pretended not to notice. Of course he did. My mom is Diane, 52 years old, female. She smells like diner coffee and ivory soap, and she loves too hard. She loves the way you keep a plant alive on a windowsill you can't afford to replace. She'll give you the good blanket and sleep in a hoodie. When she laughs, her eyes close first. She had me at 19 and we grew up like roommates, 2 girls sharing a closet full of other people's Sundays. When I got taller than her, she started saying, "My bodyguard," half joking. I used to flex and kiss the top of her head. We were a team. Then came Mark, 55 years old, male, my stepdad. Union electrician. Heavy hands, heavier boots. He knew how to fix things and how to make you feel stupid for needing them fixed. Charm that worked like a dimmer switch. Sometimes warm, sometimes gone. The first night I met him, he brought a bottle of Merlot and called me kiddo. I found the cork an hour later, chewed to pulp on the counter like a small animal had panicked. He's the kind of man who keeps receipts, not for the money, but for the proof. He was good to us, until he wasn't. He built us a bookcase and then accused me of posing when I put my yearbooks on the middle shelf. He taught me how to change my oil and then flew into a rage when I did it without asking him first. He said he didn't mind that my dad wasn't around, but he knew things about how daughters go wrong without men to keep them straight. He said all that in the kitchen, with the oven door open and the heat blooming around his calves like a threat. That's the kind of detail you don't forget. My fiancé is Evan, 29 years old, male. Calm in the way of people who've actually looked their bad years in the face and lived. He calls my mom Di and brings her lemon bars from the bakery that put powdered sugar on everything like snow. He never matched Mark's volume. He never even tried. Sometimes I resented him for that, fight him back, I wanted to hiss, but then I'd see his jaw unclench when I touched his sleeve, and I'd remember he fights me by not becoming him. My half-sister is Mia, 16 years old, female. Dark hair like mom's, Mark's temper when she's scared. She presses earbud cords into tight little rosaries when voices get loud. She adores Mark because he makes her pancakes with Mickey ears and calls her Bright Eyes, and also because that's what she knows. I don't blame her. You can love a thunderstorm. You can also jump at every cracked sky. The night he said it, the "replace me" line, I was standing at the sink, combing noodles out of the strainer with my fingers. Mom had promised to make lasagna for Sunday, but got called for a double, so I was doing it. Mark came in rolling like a storm front and got that look, the one where his eyes turn into 2 screws. "Don't start playing little husband," he said, and I laughed, confused. He slammed the cabinet. A ceramic mug leapt and exploded into blue teeth across the tile. I flinched, and something inside him liked that. He stepped close enough for me to count the threads on his collar. "You'll never replace me," he said. The words stuck in my throat like shards. I didn't tell Mom that night. I told Evan, on the phone, whispering from the back steps, my breath making ghosts in the porch light. "He wants you small," Evan said, quiet. "You don't fit." Years later, planning my wedding, we were on my mom's couch with fabric swatches in our laps, and I asked her a question I'd been sitting on like a live coal. "For the ceremony," I said carefully, "who do you want to walk you down the aisle to your seat?" The air changed. The house settled like it had taken a breath. Somewhere, a floorboard popped. Mom's hand found mine and laced our fingers like we used to when crossing streets. I didn't look at the shadow moving under the door, the shape of a man pacing, counting his steps. I still remember being 15, standing in the kitchen with a broken plate at my feet, while my stepdad Mark, 45 male, screamed in my face about respect. He had this way of turning the most normal accident into a crime scene. The plate slipped, it shattered, I apologized. But to him, it wasn't about the plate. It was about power. "You'll never replace me," he hissed, jabbing his finger into my chest like I'd personally tried to erase him. The words didn't even make sense at the time, but they burned. That became his line, repeated every time he felt threatened, which was often. If I got good grades, he'd mutter it. If Mom, Karen, 42 female, hugged me after one of his outbursts, he'd say it louder. It was like he thought love was a competition, and I was his biggest rival. The sad part? Mom let it slide. Sometimes she'd try to smooth it over with that tired voice. He didn't mean it, he's just stressed. But I could see the way her shoulders slumped. She was always caught between us, and instead of choosing sides, she chose silence. That silence cut deeper than his yelling ever could. By the time I hit 18, the pattern was set. Mark would explode, break something, a chair, a lamp, once even punched a hole in the hallway drywall. And Mom would patch it up, both literally and emotionally. I started keeping my distance, working late, crashing at friends' places. Home wasn't home. It was a minefield. The night that really cemented it for me came just after my high school graduation. I'd gotten accepted into a decent college, first in my family to do it, and Mom was proud. She hugged me in front of everyone, tears in her eyes, saying how she couldn't believe her little boy was going to make something of himself. That should have been a perfect moment. But Mark, standing there with his drink, sneered, "Don't get too full of yourself. You'll never replace me." It wasn't even the words this time. It was the look. He meant it like a curse, like he was stamping ownership over Mom, over the family, over everything. I remember clenching my fists so tight my nails dug little crescents into my palms. I wanted to swing. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just smiled at Mom and walked outside, because I knew if I reacted, he'd win. That was the first time I swore to myself. One day, I'd flip his own words back on him. One day, he'd know exactly how replaceable he really was. Don't forget to subscribe. College was supposed to be my escape, but Mark found ways to stretch his shadow across the miles. He hated that I left, said I was abandoning my real family to play big man somewhere else. Every visit home was a performance. Him slamming cupboards, calling me Mr. College Boy, muttering his favorite line under his breath. Mom would flit between us, trying to stitch the air back together with forced small talk, but it never held. By sophomore year, I stopped coming home for breaks. That's when the phone calls started. Not from Mom, from him. Always late at night, always slurred with whiskey. "You think you're better than me?" he'd bark. "You'll never replace me, kid. Never." Sometimes he'd leave voicemails that were just heavy breathing and the faint sound of a TV in the background. I saved a few of them, not sure why. Maybe proof. Maybe insurance. When I brought Evan home for the first time, it went exactly how I feared. Mark sized him up like a rival in a bar fight. Didn't ask what he did for work, didn't care about his family. Just stared him down and said, "So this is the guy trying to be the man of the house now?" Evan, bless him, just smiled and offered his hand. Mark ignored it. Mom tried to laugh it off, but her eyes begged me not to push back. Then things got physical again. It was a Sunday dinner. Roast chicken. The kind Mom made when she was trying to prove everything was normal. Evan passed me the gravy, I thanked him, and Mark slammed his fork so hard the plate cracked. "You don't thank him at my table," he snarled. Evan froze. I froze. Mom whispered, "Please, not now." And that was the line for me. I stood up, chair screeching against the tile, and told him I wasn't going to play along anymore. He shoved the table, food spilling, dishes crashing. Mia started crying. I grabbed Evan's hand and we left. After that, he escalated outside the house. One morning, I came out to find my car keyed from bumper to bumper. No witnesses, no proof, but I knew. Another time, Evan got a message request on Facebook from a fake account saying, "He'll never replace me." Same words, same ghost haunting us. Mom kept trying to play peacemaker, begging me to be the bigger person. But it was clear. Mark couldn't stand being in a world where my existence wasn't filtered through him. Every time I showed independence, college, Evan, even just cooking Mom's favorite dish, he cracked a little more. And that's when the idea of revenge started to take shape. Not loud, not violent, something cleaner. Something that would cut exactly where he'd always tried to cut me. The illusion of being irreplaceable. When Evan proposed, Mom cried harder than I did. She pulled me into the kitchen afterward, whispered, "You deserve this. Don't let anyone ruin it." I knew exactly who she meant. Planning the wedding should have been the happiest months of my life. Instead, it felt like defusing a bomb every single day. Mark inserted himself into everything. Venue, menu, even what music a real wedding should have. He kept saying things like, tradition matters. The man walks the bride down the aisle, that's how it's done. He wasn't talking about Evan. He wasn't even talking about me. He meant himself. But when I asked Mom, in that quiet moment with the fabric swatches, she didn't hesitate. She squeezed my hand and said, "You." Just like that. One word. And for the first time in years, I saw her pick a side. Mark didn't take it well. He overheard, of course. He always did. That night, he stormed into my childhood room, red-faced, slurring. "You think you're some kind of replacement husband now? You'll never replace me." He kicked the laundry basket so hard it punched a hole in the wall. I just sat there, pulse pounding, refusing to give him the reaction he wanted. But he didn't stop at yelling. A week later, my florist called to confirm I'd canceled the order. I hadn't. Same thing with the DJ. Someone, and we all knew who, was calling vendors, pretending to be me. Evan and I had to spend hours patching the mess back together. I could picture Mark at the kitchen table, phone in hand, smirking. Then came the rehearsal dinner. He showed up drunk, late, wearing a crumpled shirt. When Evan tried to welcome him, Mark shoved past so hard Evan nearly spilled his drink. All through the dinner, he made snide comments. "Hope this isn't too fancy for your college friends." Until finally, when Mom stood up to thank everyone for being there, he snapped. He slammed his fist on the table. Glasses toppled. Silverware clattered. "This is a joke," he barked, pointing at me. "She's trying to erase me, and you're all letting it happen." The room went dead silent. My aunt gasped. Mia's eyes filled with tears. Evan's hand found mine under the table, steady, grounding. And Mom, God bless her, Mom stood tall. Her voice shook, but she said, "Mark, sit down. This isn't about you." That was the crack. The first public fracture in the mask he'd worn for years. And as he stood there, face twisted, veins bulging, I realized something. This wasn't just my revenge anymore. This was Mom's too. Because when she chose me to walk her down the aisle, she was finally saying what I'd been waiting to hear since I was 15. He is replaceable. Don't forget to subscribe. Update. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up. I honestly thought a few people might read my story and say, "Yeah, your stepdad sounds like a jerk," and move on. Instead, my inbox is a war zone. Some of y'all are sending hugs, some of y'all are ready to roll up with baseball bats, and a couple of you actually DM'd me step-by-step advice on how to get someone legally banned from a wedding venue. Tempting, NGL. First off, thank you. Seriously. Reading your comments after the rehearsal dinner was weirdly grounding. Like, I wasn't crazy, right? It was unhinged when he slammed his fist on the table and screamed about being erased. For so long, I've lived in this gaslight fog where I second-guessed myself every time he exploded. Seeing strangers say, "No, that's abusive," helped me breathe again. A few people asked about my half-sister, Mia. She was at the rehearsal, and yes, she cried when he lost it. She's 16, caught between loyalty and survival, and I could see the way she folded in on herself when Mom told him to sit down. She's never seen Mom contradict him in public before. Afterward, she texted me, "Do you hate him?" I didn't answer right away. All I wrote back was, "I don't hate you." I think she needed that more. And for the people asking if he tried anything after the dinner, yeah. He showed up at my apartment that night, pounding on the door, yelling that I'd turned his wife against him. Evan locked the door and sat with me in the dark until he left. Next morning, our doormat was gone, shredded into pieces on the lawn. Just petty, pathetic stuff. But still enough to make me double-check the locks twice. The wedding is in 2 days. 2 days. And the energy in the house feels radioactive. Mom hasn't spoken to him since the rehearsal dinner. She slept in Mia's room last night. When I called to check in, she sounded nervous, but also lighter, like she'd cracked a window in a suffocating room. Some of you said I should just ban him from the ceremony altogether. Believe me, I considered it. But something in me wants him there. Wants him to see it. Because the moment that broke me at 15, him leaning in close and hissing, "You'll never replace me," is about to flip. And I want him in the room when it happens. So yeah, 2 days. Mom's walking with me. He's going to watch. And for once, he won't be able to break anything to stop it. The morning of the wedding, I woke up with a knot in my stomach so tight it felt like rope burn. Evan was calm, humming while he tied his tie. but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to detonate. Every knock at the hotel room door made me flinch. I'd begged Mom to stay with me the night before, but she wanted to be home for Mia. She texted at 7 a.m. He didn't come home last night. I pictured him drunk in a bar, nursing his rage like cheap whiskey, and prayed he'd just stay gone. He didn't. When I pulled up to the venue, he was already there. Sitting on the hood of his truck, sleeves rolled, cigarette dangling, glaring at every guest who passed. Like some self-appointed bouncer of his own crumbling kingdom. My uncle told me later he muttered, "They'll see. They'll all see," under his breath. Inside, though, was another world. Flowers reassembled, music cued, my friends buzzing around making sure I didn't combust before vows. And Mom, God, Mom looked radiant. She wore this pale blue dress that matched her eyes, and when she saw me in my suit, she pressed her hand to her mouth and whispered, "My boy." When the coordinator asked if she was ready to be escorted down the aisle, Mom turned to me. Not to Mark, to me. And loud enough for everyone to hear, she said, "I want my son." I hooked my arm through hers, heart hammering, and the doors opened. The sunlight poured in. I could feel every eye on us. But my eyes weren't on the guests, or Evan waiting at the altar. They were locked on Mark, standing rigid at the back, face blotched red, jaw twitching. He looked like a man being skinned alive. Step by step, Mom and I walked. My pulse roared in my ears. She squeezed my arm, steadying me, steadying herself. I could almost hear his voice, the one he'd drilled into me since I was a teenager. "You'll never replace me." But with every foot we moved forward, that line shriveled into nothing. Because here we were, arm in arm, and I had replaced him. The ceremony blurred after that. Evan's vows made me cry. Mia slipped me a tissue with a shaky smile. For a moment, it felt like maybe we'd escaped the worst of it. Until the reception. When the music started and glasses clinked, Mark stormed onto the dance floor, face flushed, finger pointed like a weapon. "This is a sham," he barked. The band stopped mid-song. Guests froze. "She's mine. She'll always be mine." Mom didn't even flinch. She stood, smooth as glass, and said, "Mark, sit down." He didn't. Instead, he grabbed a champagne flute and hurled it against the wall. Glass exploded like fireworks. People screamed. Mia bolted. And suddenly, the night wasn't just about vows anymore, and it was about survival. The champagne glass shattered, and for a split second the room was frozen. Everyone waiting to see if he'd stop there. He didn't. Mark grabbed another glass off the nearest table and whipped it across the room, missing the cake by inches. People screamed and scrambled back, chairs screeching against the floor. The band quietly unplugged their instruments. It was chaos, like a fire spreading in every direction. Mom's face was stone. She didn't cower. She didn't plead. She just said, in that firm voice I hadn't heard since I was a kid, "Mark, that's enough." But telling Mark enough was like throwing a match on gasoline. He turned his rage on the tables, kicking over centerpieces, scattering candles. One of my cousins tried to intervene, and Mark shoved him so hard he slammed into a chair and cut his arm on the edge. Blood dotted the white linens. Guests started yelling to call the police. I wanted to charge at him, wanted to finally put my fist where all those years of fear had been. But Evan grabbed my arm, grounding me. "Not your job," he whispered. He was right. But my body trembled with the urge to end it myself. And then came the worst moment. Mia ran toward him, sobbing, "Dad, stop!" She clutched his arm like she could anchor him back to earth. He spun on her, face twisted, and for a heartbeat I thought he might hit her. I swear if he had, I would have killed him right there in front of everyone. But he didn't. He just ripped his arm free and roared, "They're turning you against me too." That was enough. Two uncles and my cousin finally managed to tackle him, pinning him down as he thrashed like a wild animal. Someone called 911. Guests huddled against the walls, whispering, shaking, the night utterly ruined. When the cops arrived, Mark was red-faced, sweaty, cursing everyone in the room. They cuffed him and dragged him out, still shouting, "She's mine! She'll always be mine!" His voice echoed down the hall until the doors slammed. Silence settled after that. Broken glass glittered on the floor. The cake leaned from where a table had been knocked. Mom stood in the middle of it all, breathing heavy, her dress torn at the sleeve. She looked around at the wreckage, then at me, and she smiled. Just the tiniest smile, cracked and trembling, but real. "He can't break this," she whispered. I don't even remember the rest of the night. Some guests left early, others stayed to help clean. The photos we got back later show me and Evan dancing on a half-empty floor, Mom sitting with her shoes off, Mia curled beside her like a little girl again. The party wasn't what I'd imagined, but the point had already been made. He didn't win. He couldn't stop it. He was replaceable, and the whole world had seen it. Update 2. Okay. So, that escalated way beyond anything I imagined when I first posted here. I wasn't even sure I was going to write another update, but so many of you asked what happened after the reception blow-up, and honestly, writing this out feels like therapy at this point. First, yes, the police really did haul Mark out in handcuffs. A few people in the comments joked about manifesting it, but it actually happened. He's facing charges for disorderly conduct, property damage, and possibly assault since my cousin needed stitches. Seeing him shoved into the back of a cruiser, screaming about how Mom would always be his, was like watching a building finally collapse after years of cracks. Terrifying, but also a relief. Some of you asked about Mia. That's the part that hurts most. She sobbed the whole ride home. I tried to talk to her later, but she wouldn't look at me, just whispered, "You made him snap." And I get it. That's how she's been trained. To think his explosions are everyone else's fault. But I saw something in her eyes that night too. Doubt. Like for the first time she realized maybe her dad isn't the invincible giant she thought he was. I think that seed is going to grow, even if she resents me for now. As for Mom, God, she hasn't been back to the house since. She packed an overnight bag and came to stay with me and Evan. She keeps saying she'll go back eventually, for Mia's sake. But when I watch her laugh in my kitchen with a glass of wine, I can tell she doesn't miss walking on eggshells. She told me this morning, "I feel like I can breathe again." That alone made every broken glass and ruined photo worth it. Family fallout has been messy. Half of them think we provoked him by not giving him some role in the wedding. The other half are calling me a hero. One aunt actually pulled me aside and said, "You gave your mom back her life?" I don't feel like a hero. Mostly I just feel exhausted. And to answer the DMs, no, I don't regret having him there. If he'd been banned, he would have spun his own story. The poor victim. The man pushed out of his own family. But now, everyone saw the truth. The mask cracked in front of an audience. There's no fixing that. The wedding wasn't perfect. The photos are messy, the memories sharp-edged. But in the middle of all that chaos, when I walked my mom down the aisle with Mark watching, I got my revenge. He spent years telling me I'd never replace him. Well, he was wrong. And he knows it now. The week after the wedding felt like living in a hangover that never ended. Not from the drinks, but from the sheer weight of everything. Every time my phone buzzed, my chest clenched, expecting it to be Mark somehow. Another voicemail, another threat. But it wasn't him. It was lawyers, detectives, family members picking sides like we were in some twisted custody battle. Mark had been released on bail less than 24 hours after his arrest. That alone sent a chill through me. He didn't call or show up, but I knew he was out there, stewing. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that Mark doesn't stew quietly. Mom filed for a restraining order. Watching her sign those papers was surreal, like seeing someone finally cut the last string of a puppet show they'd been forced into for years. She told the clerk, voice trembling but steady, "He doesn't control me anymore." I wanted to cry, but it wasn't that simple. Mia refused to stay with us. She kept saying, "He needs me. I can't leave him." She'd visit Mom at my place, sit at the kitchen counter with her hoodie pulled up, eyes darting around like she was being watched. She'd say she was fine, but her nails were bitten to the quick. I hated Mark more than ever for trapping her in that cage of guilt. The rest of the family? A war zone. Some of them called me dramatic, said, "It's just Mark's temper," like that excused anything. Others told me they wished they'd spoken up years ago. My cousin with the stitches hasn't stopped thanking me. If you hadn't pushed back, who knows what he would have done to Mia eventually. That thought keeps me awake at night. As for Mark himself, he tried crawling back into the narrative. He sent Mom a letter, handwritten, messy, rambling apologies mixed with accusations. "You've been poisoned against me. He's trying to replace me. I'm still your husband." Mom didn't even read it all. She handed it to me and said, "Burn it." So I did. Right there in the sink, flame licking the edges until it was ash. Symbolic, maybe. but cathartic. Still, there's this feeling like he's lurking just beyond the edge of things. Every creak in the hallway, every unfamiliar car outside makes my skin prickle. I know the cops are handling it, but cops don't live inside my chest. Cops don't know the way his voice echoes in my head, the way that one sentence still claws at me. You'll never replace me. Except now, when I hear it, another voice cuts through. Mom's, at the wedding, clear and loud enough for everyone to hear. I want my son. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the beginning of something different. It's been 3 months since the wedding, and I still catch myself tensing at shadows sometimes. Trauma doesn't just vanish. It lingers in the corners. But life is quieter now. Quieter in a way I didn't realize I'd been craving my whole life. Mark's court date came and went. He took a plea deal. Anger management, community service, fines, no jail time, typical. But the restraining order stuck. He can't come within 200 yards of Mom or me. Watching the judge read that out loud and seeing Mark shrink in his chair was the closest thing to justice I think we'll ever get. Mom didn't go back, not once. She found a little apartment across town, nothing fancy, but hers. I helped her carry boxes up the stairs, and when we set down the last one, she stood in the middle of the bare living room and whispered, "It feels like mine." I don't think I've ever seen her smile so freely. Mia still lives with him most of the time, but the cracks are showing. She's been spending more weekends with Mom, sleeping on the pullout, laughing at movies again. Last week she told me, in this tiny voice, "It's quieter here." I didn't push. I just nodded. Because I know that realization has to be hers, not mine. As for me, I finally feel like I kept the promise I made at 18, standing outside after graduation with my fists clenched. I told myself I'd flip his words back on him one day, that I'd show him how replaceable he really was. And I did. Not with violence, not with screaming, but with love. With family. With that walk down the aisle, every step a nail in the coffin of his delusion. Sometimes I replay that moment in my head. The doors opening, sunlight flooding in, Mom's arm hooked through mine, and Mark's face at the back of the room. That was it. That was the revenge. He spent years trying to convince me I'd never matter as much as him, and in the end, he had to watch me take the place he thought was untouchable. And the best part? It wasn't just revenge. It was freedom. For me. For Mom. For the life we're building without him. He'll never admit it, but he lost. Not just at the wedding, not just in court. He lost the one thing he thought he controlled forever. The illusion that he couldn't be replaced. Because he was. And the proof is in every photo from that day. Every smile, every step. Proof he'll never escape.